Action.
We've all seen it. Beautiful, hypnotic, super slow motion. In 2013, the Phantom Flex 4K digital cinema camera was introduced, and commercial director Jonathan Bregel was on it. As in, he actually bought one, way before most people even had the chance to try it. Who does that?
I guess I did.
And boy, did he use it.
We called it phantom bowling. You just grab the phantom by the top handle and you just rip it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
It creates this poetic, ethereal feeling that I love.
John would go on to start a production company, hire his friends, and make some of the most iconic commercial work of the era for all the big brands.
This shot here, that wasn't planned at all.
What?
We were driving by and he just threw the water at the car window. At the time, this was sort of like uncharted territory. It was completely insane and we almost destroyed the camera on the first day.
Racking up Vimeo staff pics left and right, exotic locations, celebrity talent, and office space in New York City. And at the height of his career, he just stopped. All right, Jonathan Bregel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dylan.
So, in a past episode, I was talking with DP Ollie Miller, whom I know you've worked with in the past. He said you actually purchased a high-speed Phantom camera so that you could shoot super slow motion whenever you wanted. Who does that?
I guess I did. Yeah, that was a special purchase because at my old production company, Variable, which I know you wanted to ask more about down the line, but we did a lot of promos, commercials, everything. And we were always looking for ways to elevate it. And I had just fallen in love with slow motion cinematography earlier on in my career. There was a few personal projects that I did with the Phantom that I just used because I had a friend that owned a Phantom. And then I found a way to pull them off like a couple of commercials that I was doing as well to like make personal projects. And so I started getting hired as a director and as a production company to do things that involved slow motion. So it just sort of became synonymous with the Variable kind of ethos in those beginning days. And we were renting it so often that it just turned out, okay, well, let's just buy one. And so that was a really happy day.
Yeah, it's most people's interaction with a Phantom or a super slow motion setup. Like most productions shape their entire day around the needs of that setup. And did you find yourself just being like, I've got it here, let's whip it out?
100%. Yeah. I mean, from the first time I ever used it, I was filming a Taylor Swift documentary and I'd never used one before. And I had a friend that owned one. And I was like, dude, do you think you can ship it to me to use on this documentary and just like elevate it? And good friend, he shipped it out for free. And so I just figured it out like in the box. It's actually a really simple camera to figure out.
Really?
Extremely simple. I think there's like a whole idea that because it's expensive and you need like a DIT and so on and so forth that it's complicated, but it's actually really simple. And I think within getting it maybe in 30 minutes, I'd figured the thing out enough to like...
No way.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that's
cool.
Pretty much how it works.
Yeah, most people rent that. Like if you go to online rental companies like Lens Rentals or Borrow Lenses, like there's a disclaimer like, hey, this is not a plug and play piece of equipment, right? So that's really encouraging actually to hear you say that it's not this impossible mountain of technical, prowess that you need to have.
It's also just a liability, I think, to have on any set. So it 100% makes sense to have a tech on commercial jobs because if you're renting it, it's like a really expensive piece of gear.
Sure.
And there's a lot of like complex ways that you can set up the trigger and the recording that you absolutely need a DIT for. And I could give a lot of examples of that. But in terms of the way that I love to shoot with it, just like out in the field and run and gun, it's super basic.
Yeah, it's super inspiring. Can I ask what the investment level, like which camera it was at the time and what did that whole setup cost?
Yeah, so this was the Phantom Flex 4K. It was right when it came out. I was actually loosely involved in the development of the camera with a few other friends. And so we were constantly giving like feedback and so on and so forth. So we got it super early and
Nice.
yeah, it was a gift. I mean, it was a Well, it wasn't a gift in the sense that it was free, but it was really expensive. Yeah.
So I've actually been unknowingly pretty familiar with your work of the past 10 years. I'm thinking projects like Rocket Wars with Solomon Lecthelm, Holy, Out of the Blue, Forward with Confidence for Gap Kids, that adorable piece called Shake featuring dogs in slow motion. Let's just say that Vimeo Staff Picks team definitely were familiar with you. Silly question, was that ever validating, like getting one of those?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And this was also at a time in like the Vimeo heyday as well, where Vimeo staff picks were like a really big deal back then, because different agencies and clients were starting to tap into that ecosystem and find creatives there. And so not only was it validating, it was actually a sign that, okay, my work is getting a lot of eyes on it, and that's actually good for my career and to like pay the bills and to get opportunities. So it was extremely helpful in more ways than one, for sure.
So I want to actually like kind of rapid fire pick some projects of yours in the past and just kind of poke at them, ask some questions. Sound good?
For sure.
Where did this concept come from?
This concept came from a good friend named Carly Davidson, who was an animal photographer living out in Oregon. And my business partner at the time saw the photo series that she did on, I think it was on Petapixel, or one of those big like viral photo websites. And he had known my interest in phantom cinematography because the projects that I'd done, and he was like, dude, we got to shoot this on the Phantom. And of course I was like, duh, like this would just be so much fun. And we hit up Carly and we're like, hey, we have access to a Phantom camera. It shoots 2,000 frames a second. What do you think about us collaborating on a project and like bringing these photos to life? And she was totally down. And so we flew out there and we all crashed at her. There was 3 of us that flew out, or 4 of us that flew out from New York City, and we crashed at her house, and her and her husband made us a bunch of good food, and we just kind of chilled in the studio for a couple of days and made this little passion project.
That's awesome. I got to ask, the amount of debris coming off these dogs, did you guys do anything to add to that, or was it all natural?
No, it was all natural, and Carly has a little trick that I can't give away. I've been sworn to secrecy. I'll leave the guessing up to the viewers.
What was a particular challenge with this project?
I would say the biggest challenge with this project was just not knowing how any of the dogs were going to react going into it. You know, we had, I think, 30 dogs or something lined up for the 2 days. And I was just concerned that they weren't, but Carly was fully confident. So there wasn't actually like a real challenge. It was more of my own insecurities and fears. But Carly had it in the bag the whole time. Like when we showed up and got to meet her and saw how she works with the animals, it was smooth sailing. So she's just a real pro and someone I continue to work with to this day. So
I love that. Okay, give me some background on this project called Holy. How did this one come to be?
So this was another passion project, and I want to say this now. This might have been like, I don't know, 14 years ago or something like that. I found the concept in a similar way to how we came across the Shake photo concept, where I was just online and I saw photographs in India of the Holi celebration, and immediately I was just like, okay, we got to find a way to do this. And on the bus ride home, I put together a little brief that was like 3 pages long with a bunch of photos, sent it to my business partner, and was like, we got to find a way to do this. We had a connection with the Phantom through a rental shop at Rule Boston Camera, and basically sent the treatment to them and asked them, you know, if we can collaborate on this in some way, you guys can use it for your marketing for the Phantom, for whatever. Would you let us take the camera to India? Little did they know it was completely insane, and we almost destroyed the camera on the first day. But it ultimately worked out really well. And
Is it really just you and a Phantom camera capturing the right movements at the right time, in the right places, with the right people at the right time, like to make these shots?
well, some of the shots were rehearsed. I would actually say the majority of the shots are rehearsed. So when we went there, it was myself and Khalid Mutasib, who's also a cinematographer, and we were like co-directing, co-DPing the project. And we went there also with a producer and an AC slash DIT, and we had 2 local support crew on the ground there. But our whole plan going into it was, okay, to our fixer, show us all the spots where madness is happening, and we're just going to document it, like street photography style. And that was like completely naive and uninformed, because we tried to do it and we almost broke the camera on the first day. And so we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and get realistic. So what we decided to do was set up a lot of these like little vignettes all around this town where all this was going on. And actually, this shot here you're seeing of a little kid throwing the water at the camera, that was actually captured purely spontaneously. That wasn't planned at all.
What?
We were driving by and he just threw the water at the car window, and I just happened to be rolling the camera. So like there's a few moments like that throughout the piece that were captured spontaneously. But most of them we had like an abundance of powder, and we would find these little areas that were like really cool, and like art directing kind of like captured the spirit of what we felt and experienced. And we would do a few takes and the camera stayed safe, and we walked home with enough shots to make a little film.
So cool. I think this shot here is the most iconic of the entire piece.
Man, this is making me want to do some I was actually just talking to Oliver Miller the other day, and I was like, man, we gotta get out there again, man, with the Phantom, because him and I had some good times with that camera.
Yeah, he's a big fan of that. That was a consistency in his work that I pointed out, and
Yeah.
he actually said it was because of you.
Yeah, he's an incredibly talented guy.
Yeah. Did you have a focus puller for this?
No, we didn't. And all the movements are basically, I'm sure everyone knows by now how you do this, but you just move the camera super fast. But at the time, this was sort of like uncharted territory, taking like the Phantom out, and slow motion wasn't like a normal thing on cinema cameras even, and cell phones definitely didn't have it. So it looked crazy at the time. It's like you're kind of bowling. We called it Phantom bowling. You just grab the Phantom by the top handle and you just rip it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And it creates this very like poetic, ethereal feeling that I love. I mean, that's kind of how I see life in my best moments, is like that. And that's why I'm so drawn to slow motion. It just creates this state of deep presence.
Yeah. What frame rate do you think you need? Does it need to get up to in order to evoke this feeling?
I think a lot of this stuff was around 1,000 frames a second. Some of it maybe more, but I love 1,000 frames a second. That's probably like 2,000 frames a second, I would guess. It's like almost static.
What lenses did you rely on for this piece?
So we had 2 Ingenue zooms that we got on loan from Ingenue. Back then, when I was getting started, I was really big about doing gear collaborations with vendors. Like I would go to NAB and just talk to people and be like, hey, you have this new like 45 to 120, like I have a project and I want to take it to wherever. Is that cool? And kind of like share them the brief. And people were really open. And this is still a common thing people do.
Now more than ever, I think that's done.
Yeah, and that was largely like how a lot of my initial reel was built, was through like borrowing gear from people. And so we got these 2 Ingenues. One of them was a prototype. I think there was only like a few in the world. And we built this custom filter for it. It was the 45 to 120 was one of them, which wasn't even out yet. And we built this like custom circular filter and like fashioned it so it didn't leave the front element of the lens, and the lens barrel was always protected, so like none of the dust could get into it.
Nice.
But yeah, we built the whole camera system kind of like a tank.
Okay, I want to talk about Out of the Blue.
I knew it had to be simple. So it had to be one primary color. It was a color chosen essentially because it was free from meaning. It didn't have the meaning of red, it didn't have the meaning of green, didn't have the meaning of yellow. It doesn't have any meaning.
This one really sticks out to me, man. What's the context on this man? How did you get linked up with this project?
So the man in this film was my old neighbor in Baltimore. And he was the first person that I met on my block before I moved there. I was walking around with a medium format still camera, looking at homes in the neighborhood to move there. This was when I was still living in New York City. And so I was walking around the street that I lived on and just taking photos, looking around, getting a feel for things. And I saw this guy sitting up on a stoop that was like slightly further back than like my eye could really make out. And I remember just thinking like I was hallucinating or something like that when I first saw him. And I just stopped and I just said like, "Excuse me, are you blue?" Like, "Are you blue?" Like that was actually what I asked him. And he's like, "Yeah, I am," and just started doing his whole thing. And he's like, "I'm actually the most tattooed man in the world." And like kind of just started telling me his story. And so I took a few portraits of him that day. And then I ended up finding a house just a few doors down from him. And yeah, we became pretty close. And he's a really, really nice, kind-hearted, soft soul. And so it was just felt necessary to come into his world a little bit and understand his story.
I think you know how to do this really well. I think you know how to find a character that interests you and then find like a unique way to capture that character. And you clearly did that here with this piece. When faced with someone like this, with this much unique complexity, how do you know what to do in order to capture him? Like, what's your process?
A lot of times I don't. I just meet somebody and I have a particular type of resonance and something strikes a chord deep within me. And I've started to recognize that feeling is recognizing that there is some type of story there. And I can't really articulate it all the time, and I never really know what the story is from the beginning, but there's this yearning to learn more about who this person is and why they do what they do. And if that curiosity is within me when I meet somebody, then I have a confidence that there is a film there or there's a story there.
Yeah. There's a few shots I want to break down.
Yeah.
This interview right here. I mean, did you just find a blue wall to sit him in front of?
Yeah, the whole film was filmed right on his property and right around his house within like a couple block radius. So this was just a wall in his second floor. And I thought, this would look interesting with this blue guy contrasted against the wall with his hair and just minimal. It was just worked out. None of this stuff was really planned. We just had a couple days of filming with him and a couple friends and just sort of played around. And Steve Hoover, the editor, who's incredible, really made this thing come together. It wouldn't have been possible without him at all.
I think my favorite shot of the whole film is this one, where he's laying in the grass as people are kind of walking by. Can you just break down for me like what you're doing with this shot here and what led you to choose these things like this?
Well, he's obviously an outsider. When you look at him, he doesn't belong anywhere in this world. And we were walking up to Federal Hill Park, which is this park, which is a block away from our homes. And we saw all these people walking up the stairs. And for whatever reason, it just clicked to me to have him lay down as like a spectator in this big wide world and just watching it go by. And a lot of times these things are never planned. It's just like a feeling. And that's what I love about experiential or experimental documentary filmmaking is you have kind of like a loose idea and a bunch of feelings mapped out, and you just use that as a roadmap and you just play. And this was one of those moments that just felt like there was a bigger story at play, and everyone's looking at him like, who is this guy? Like, this guy's crazy. It's like he's looking at them and they're looking at him. So there's a whole story going on in that shot, and that's why I love it.
I mean, John, we'll get into documentary filmmaking a little bit later, but I'm telling you, there's nothing better, at least in my opinion, of like shooting this moment where things had to come together at the right time, at the right moment, and you did it and you captured it. Was that just like this whole shoot for you?
Yeah, pretty much. We went in with like a few ideas, and a friend of ours had a couple airy master anamorphics for a couple days from a shoot that he was doing. And we were like, let's just film this. Let's film a bunch of things, have some fun. I did a couple pickup shots as well after the couple of shoot days. But really, this thing largely came together on the spot and in the edit. And it's also because like Steve and I, who was the co-director on this with me, and the editor, we just have an incredible working relationship. And I just love him as a person, and there's no bad idea. Like, we just love throwing around ideas and shaping little scene ideas, and then he's a master at stitching things together in post. So,
all right, I want to talk about Variable. For those who don't know, Variable was a production company that had been known for producing the best of its time when it comes to cinematic commercials, music videos, films. I mean, you sent me this video, which it's like 10 seconds long, but it's like a lot of fast cuts of just what looks like filmmaker bliss, insanity, you know, from your time at Variable. Was it really that?
It was. Yeah, it was filmmaker bliss for, whether that was 6 or 7 years in that company, because we were surrounded with so many filmmakers that were just curious, innovative, wanting to break in, and there was just a lot of really great energy surrounding us at that time, and there was constantly projects going on, personal projects, commercial projects, and that's all I wanted to do at that point in my life. That was everything to me, and so I got a really good taste of the industry, for sure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, talking about the industry, I think the industry, at least in the way I know you've worked with it in the past, can be kind of commercial, right? We're creating ads and work designed to show off a product or a company, and it's always insane to me how much art and creative energy goes behind that kind of stuff. You know, why do you think, like, I know what it's like to get really jazzed about a commercial, about creating an ad. What's so fulfilling about creating commercials?
I think what's the most fulfilling about creating commercials is just the opportunity to collaborate with people that I really enjoy working with, and creating something that has a deadline and there's a result, and you can very quickly see how well you did, and you can learn the things that you want to do better the next time. And there's a really great collaborative experience from beginning to middle to end, and then hopefully you continue working with those people again, which in my case is what I really strive to do throughout my career, is to just find new and creative ways to work with a lot of the same people. And that, I think, is the beauty of it, is like such mutual growth, and you have something that you walk away with at the end of the day.
Yeah. As you said, you did make a big shift, right? You decided to leave this production company that you spent so much time and energy building. Why the shift?
So the shift to leave the production company behind was a culmination of a lot of things that went sort of unaddressed over years and years of being, you know, I was 22 years old when that company started. So like, I didn't know anything about business at all. Like, I was just hungry and passionate and creative, loved working with other creative people, loved brainstorming. I was living in New York City. It was fast paced. Like, everything was just super exciting. And I just thought that's kind of what it was like to be a filmmaker. Like, I thought that was just my path. Like, this is what it was. And I got there, and I reached a lot of milestones pretty quickly between the types of brands I was working with, the collaborators, having a company, obviously, like getting great representation, winning some awards. all the things. And while it was a tremendous amount of fun, like along the way, there was a lot of things that were going unaddressed, like with my well-being and just how I was just how I was not really living my life outside of work. And a lot of things just became clear more and more to me as the years went on, that I was basically just like a full-blown workaholic and I didn't have a life outside of my work. And it really took me meeting who's now my wife, a woman, when I was in Shanghai working on a job, to really open my eyes up to life outside of work. Like that was kind of like the kind of big aha moment, because I'd had close friends and employees like over the years be like, John, you should like not sleep in the office tonight, or like you should go do something fun this weekend. Or, you know, one of the best examples was when my old roommate, Nick Midwig, who's an amazing filmmaker, said to me one night, I was working on a treatment at like 2 a.m, and he was like, you know, John, when was the last time that you had fun? And there's all these accumulative things. Also, like sleeping on my parents' couch all day when I go to visit them. You know, it's like started to become really aware that I'm just tired. Like I'm just burned out, and I didn't really have the vocabulary of like what depression, what burnout, what anxiety. I didn't really have that vocabulary. I didn't really grow up with understanding. I just thought it was just all hustle. Like that was just what it meant to be a filmmaker. That's how you survive. And so it just got to a point where like it just wasn't fun anymore. Everything just kind of started to feel like a grind. And then meeting my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, obviously, I was like, I'd had a few failed relationships over the last, however many years. And I had enough awareness to know that like, I'm addicted to my work, and that's why these relationships aren't working. Like I'm not that naive. But when I met her, I was like, okay, like if I want to make this work, for one, she lives in China and I live in New York City.
Yeah.
And for two, like some big things in my career are going to have to change if I want to see her and if I want to develop this relationship. And so it was very much like a love at first sight kind of thing. And then she came back to visit me in New York City about a month later for a couple of weeks. And then I went to visit her a couple months later in China for 2 months. And then I came back to our new office space in Dumbo. We just moved into this like big office, and all the furniture was moving into the office. And I had this sort of out of body experience where I was just like, or it wasn't even me, it was something way greater than me that just paused me in my tracks and was like, John, you need to get out of here now if you want to move forward with this relationship.
Wow.
Because if I just couldn't keep up with the workload and have what I ultimately wanted in my life, which was love that I'd felt that I was pushing away for so many years. So
wow.
There's a whole lot of reasons why I left. And it was the hardest couple of weeks of my life. Or a couple of the hardest weeks of my life to walk away from that company and all the people. Like we didn't really have any turnover at the company. Like it was all pretty much friends and people we came up together. And so it was really difficult 2 weeks, but ultimately,
wow,
for whatever reason, I just knew that it was the right move. And
yeah, it's amazing the impact of other people on our life. Like friends to tell you, like, hey, what's wrong with you? Or women to inspire us.
Yeah.
It's interesting where, God, where any of us would be without other people that really care about us,
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I really believe that wholeheartedly now, and just being honest and having really close relationships and real conversations with my friends. And we just kind of keep each other in check. And that's something that I wasn't really attuned to earlier in my career. I didn't really want to listen to what anybody else had to say. I just kind of thought that I was doing the best thing. And I had a whole lot of blind spots. And I still do, but I've gotten better at acknowledging and listening to others and myself when it seems that there's shifts that need to happen.
Yeah. I mean, when the clock that is life is ticking for everyone, what do you tell someone who's not sure if they're in the right place?
Yeah.
Well, that's really inspiring, man. If you go to the website for Variable now, it says Variable is now Nourish. What
Right.
is Nourish?
So Nourish is a community that I founded almost 3 years ago, which is a community of filmmakers in pursuit of wellness, meaningful relationships, and growth. And that was built off the back of Variable. So the story with Variable was the company ultimately fell apart a little less than a year after I left for a whole laundry list of reasons, largely due to the fact that work had just dried up and we lost like a record number of pitches in a row. And we also just didn't have the same vibe and connection that we did when we started. The stakes were just so high at that point, and we needed, we had such a high overhead. It just wasn't fun anymore. So the company closed down, and then it was a few years later, through a lot of conversations with my old business partner, that I had this idea to relaunch Variable as this wellness community and have a lot of these conversations that we weren't really having at the time at Variable as a business. And so that's how it initially started. And a lot of the people that were in the ground floor were people that I'd coached one-on-one in my own coaching practice. And so it just became a place where we're having like really meaningful conversations and building a great network of people that all kind of have similar desires. And it's just been the last 3 years. I never would have imagined how much it's grown in terms of its meaning to me and to the other members. And so I just keep going back every day because it's just a really great group of filmmakers and people. So
It's cool.
yeah.
What do you get out of coaching? And what percentage of your time in your life right now is dedicated to coaching versus filmmaking, whether it be director or DP?
So there's a lot of things that I get out of coaching, but I think what's the most meaningful is that you're getting to facilitate other filmmakers through their own journeys of self-discovery, creative rebirth, and that is incredibly fulfilling. Like I just wrapped up a long-term client this morning, and it was our last call, and those calls are always like almost bring tears to my eyes because you get to just learn how much these people have grown. And it reminds me of when I was first coached, like 7 or 8 years ago, just like the amount of transformation that you can have within a few months, and like being really dedicated and showing up for yourself throughout the process. It's like I get to be fully present with my clients every day. And like that type of connection is so meaningful. And we talk about meaningful things. We talk about our values. We talk about our dreams. We talk about our fears. And it's just so humanizing. And between that and the film work that I'm doing now, it's all kind of the same chord where I'm just really striving for that deep state of connection in everything I do. And I've found that I've been able to do that in independent film work and in my coaching work. So that's largely what's occupying my time at the moment.
Yeah, that's an incredible mission, man. Absolutely love it. I think there's so much room in this space, in this filmmaking industry, for us to like support each other. And so it's really cool that you've dedicated so much of your time and energy into doing that.
Thank you.
But aside from that, the work that you're doing now, is there a difference between the work that you're doing now and the work that you were doing with Variable?
I think the main difference between the work that I'm doing now and the work I was doing at Variable is that I'm just doing a lot less of it, and I'm just being much more intentional about the projects that I'm taking on. Since coaching is basically my career now, it's my job, filmmaking is returned to be more of my passion, that was my plan for the last like 7 years, was like try and get back to a place where I can just be a kid again and like just make things that I want to make and not have anybody tell me what to do. And that's largely what commercial filmmaking was for me in my experiences. There is something at the end of the day that reflects slightly part of who I am, but often it's for a brand that I personally don't really have any personal connection to. And with the films and the projects that I'm involved with now, I'm picking them, I'm manifesting them, I'm involved from the very beginning in most cases, and there's no one to tell me really what I have to do. And the challenge with my commercial work back in the day, especially at Variable, was like we had a great overhead, you know, and so my creativity was very suppressed for a long period of time. Even though I did create a lot of works that I'm still happy with as a director, like I was constantly overwhelmed and like burned out and not really fully present to life outside of the work. And so now it's just less work, more intentional, and just coming back to a place of play where there's really no pressure. And it's just a more joyful experience. And I realize that's a luxury, an amazing position to be in. But at the same time, I've worked very hard for it. It's been a goal of mine for years to get here. And so I'm just making the most of it right now.
Well, dude, congrats. Seriously, I think what you've done is something that, like, I'm not going to speak for all filmmakers, but most filmmakers really want to get, really want to end up doing. The freedom to create the projects that we want to create, the ones that are important to us, that don't take so much from us. I mean, I think, like, the act of creating a film, it's always going to take from us. You know what I mean? It's always going to cost us energy, time, money. But I think, like, if we get to expend less energy that harms us while creating the things we want to create, to me, that's like an ideal space to be in.
I would totally agree.
So, speaking of the work that you want to do, is there a project that you're working on right now that is that?
Yeah, so I've been in post-production on a film that I directed last April, 2024.
This is the place nobody wants to come to. Nobody wants to have to be here.
My name's Sierra, and my twin brother Andrew was murdered in August of 2018.
My son committed suicide. In my culture, we're given 4 days to grieve. And you don't talk about it anymore, you don't cry anymore.
My son passed away at 14 years old. After everybody said goodbyes, we stopped the life support, and we were able to crawl into bed with him and hold him. We'd feel when his soul left his body.
It's a project that's like very near and dear. I mean, it's like the epitome of a personal project to me. And it's just required a tremendous amount of processing due to the material and the stories that we're telling within the film. And so I've been spending a lot of time over the last year in between all of my coaching work, just like chipping away, managing the relationships. And now we are well into post-production. Yeah, I'm really, really excited to put it out there because I feel like it's the first thing I've made in a really long time where I just surrendered fully to the great unknown and just allowed myself to be completely vulnerable. And it was a very good exercise.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's awesome. Can you just break down for me a little bit of what the project's about?
Yeah, for sure. So what we did was a small crew and there was 3 of us. We went to a property that is outside of Sedona, Arizona, called the Sela Care Farm. And it's a farm that helps the traumatically bereaved work with their grief. And so you can imagine the types of stories that go there are very heavy. So we documented a group of people going through one of their programs. And we also told the story of Eric, who's a farmhand who came to the property after his 3 children were murdered. And it was just an incredible experience being there and just learning really what life is all about and like how to truly be grateful for what we have, because at any given moment, you know, the thing that we hold most dear could be taken away from us. And I think this film in many ways is a meditation on life for me. Like I was mentioning before, how I didn't really have much of a life outside of my work when I was in my 20s. And these last like 7 years since leaving my old business, I've truly been learning how to live a life and to enjoy my life. And so when I meet people like Dr. Joe, who's one of the lead subjects in the film, who's like one of the foremost grief experts in the world, and hang out with her staff and the people there and getting to know them this whole time, it's just been, I can't think of a better word other than a blessing. And the project showed up in a way that was totally unexpected. And I flew out to Arizona without any idea of what this film was going to be. And I just flew there to meet with Dr. Joe and meet her one-on-one and talk with her about the possibility of making a film. And within 5 minutes, we ultimately determined the concept of the film. We just sat down and she asked me, "So John, what do you want to do?" And I was like, I don't really know, honestly. Like, I just want to see if it's possible to tell a story here and what that would look like and how we could do that in a way that is respectful of everyone that works here. It reflects the values of you. How do we do that? What does that look like? I don't know. Like, I've never been here before, so I'm not going to come here and impose something on you and your people. And within 5 minutes, she brought up a couple ideas. We landed on one, and that's ultimately what was the springboard for the film. And I went back home, did a whole bunch of pre-interviews with all of the individuals that were going through the program, and developed the story threads going into it. And then myself, a DP, Ryan Sanderson, and one of the producers, Ian Chi, we went out there for 9 days and filmed the whole thing. And as you can imagine, it was a lot of tears were shed. It was just an incredible experience getting to meet these heroes that are surviving after what they experienced.
Yeah, I don't know if would have the emotional strength to shoot this one. You know, like spending this much time getting into the weeds with people who are in the darkest times of their lives. You know, do you think that's a tough job, man? And for this to be the job that you choose, something that you really want to put yourself into, like, do you think you're well tailored, well suited to capture stories with this much gravity?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think that I was called to this project. That's how I see it. I can't say that it was something that I absolutely wanted to do, but I came to this project from a place of having a lot of unresolved trauma and pain in my own life. And I know that I heal best in the process of making films. And I'd read so much about trauma. I even made a short film about a family friend whose wife died of breast cancer and got to learn about his grief story. And I was largely learning how to process my own grief through the process of a couple years. And this film was an important piece of that, to understand how to live experiencing the most tragic type of loss one can imagine. To me is just something that I knew would impact me in a way, and that I felt that I had the sensibility to do it. But what I didn't know was that no matter how much I prepared and meditated and prayed and everything that I did before making the film, I thought that I was completely ready, and we got through the shoot and it was amazing. I held up very well during the shoot, and it wasn't until about 2 months after the filming that I had a massive existential crisis that turned into a really deep depression. And it ultimately came from the fact that I had been running away for a lot of my life from things that were deeply meaningful to me, and patchworking them with things that would bring me some type of financial or temporary success. And I had such a depression that I could barely get out of bed, and I ended up having to go on antidepressant medications. And I was lucky and fortunate that I had enough awareness to know what was happening within me, to know that it was this type of like ego death of sorts. Not that my ego is away, but it was the death of my wanting to be this like cool kid, commercial, successful filmmaker, and ignoring those kind of whispers within me that wanted me to tell these deeper, heartfelt stories. And that part of me it just shattered, and
Wow.
it was so painful. And now, it's been 10 months since we filmed the project, and I'm in a really, really good space mentally, but I've had to do a lot of processing. And this film was the catalyst for all of that. And when I think about being called to this project, I think that's what it wanted from me, was for me to have a breakdown. And at this point, I feel confident that if this film didn't even see the light of day, I would be completely content, because
Wow.
I just
Wow.
got so much out of it. But I want people to see this film because I think it's a really important study of human pain and belonging and being. So,
Wow. I'll definitely be watching it. It's going to be a tough watch for me, but I'll definitely watch
Yeah.
it. I mean, that's a heavy one, John. Identity,
Yeah.
loving oneself, ego death. Are you saying you've experienced ego death?
No, not complete ego death. I mean, I think that would be a ludicrous statement, but I mean, the part of my ego that was completely attached to being a successful filmmaker, a successful commercial filmmaker, having my own production company, getting all the awards, and the old version of myself that I had put on a pedestal wasn't serving me for so many years. And this project sort of exploded that former identity and broke me down to the ground to realize what's actually most meaningful in life is just relationships, gratitude, being here, all these things that don't have much to do with awards and making a lot of money.
I want to switch gears and talk about how feature-length documentaries have existed for nearly a century, but they always haven't been this cinematic. It seems that like more and more documentaries released on streamers like HBO and Netflix are adopting this highly stylized, carefully composed imagery.
I struggle with the idea of cinematic documentary, and it's something that I sort of started out with. It was this idea that you could make a documentary look really good. And I think I was at the forefront of that with a bunch of other filmmakers when like DSLRs came out, and now all of a sudden you could get a shallow depth of field and be very mobile and capture spontaneity in like very kind of cinematic ways. And I think that came from like a very pure, exciting, and expressive place. And I have seen though, however, over the years, as technology is growing and talent is emerging from every angle, it's as though
Right.
we're imposing a style onto a documentary as opposed to really starting with the heart of the story and letting the story determine the style of the documentary, if that makes sense. It's almost as if we just want to have that thing on our reel that looks like a Netflix documentary so that we get hired to do Netflix documentaries. And I think that's a totally backwards way to think about it in terms of artistic expression. But I think in terms of maybe getting hired for a Netflix documentary, maybe you might want to have something like that on your reel if you want to go a more conventional path. But I'm more inclined to see how people's instincts take them to tell stories visually.
Have you seen the trailer for that documentary, Surviving Black Hawk Down?
I think I saw some clips from it.
Dude, indistinguishable in my opinion, those visuals between that and like an actual movie, like a full narrative fiction.
That's kind of cool though, because they're like in the moment documenting that in real life, right?
I believe so. If you look at the interviews on that thing, I
Yeah.
mean, it's amazing. And I think it's really cool. And I think like, for sure, let's close that gap. Like, let's make documentaries like the most cinematic they can be.
Yeah.
But not at the risk of losing, like, actually telling a great story.
Well, I think my feelings about the look of a film also have to do a lot with the integrity of the relationships with the subjects too, and not bossing people around too much to shape something in a certain way. And again, this is just my feeling about it, because I used to do that a lot back in, especially in the commercial space. Like a lot of times you're not even filming in the subject's homes. Like you're actually casting and location scouting and putting a real person in a different house and in different wardrobe and changing the shears and telling them how their daughter should dress and even what they can eat. And it just starts to feel kind of gross at a certain point if you do enough of it. I understand the intention of it, but at the same time, as someone who is trying to get back to my roots of like documentary storytelling that works for me, I'm more interested in like being there where the subject lives in their environment, not making them wait a long time for setups and letting them exist as much as possible within the space so that you're not having to really create some type of fabrication of what is real.
Dude, I've been there. Yeah, because you want it to look good, you take and fictionalize everything almost, and then by the time the subject is there to actually emote what they're feeling, they're completely busted out of it because you've wrapped this artificial movie set around them, you know?
And some people are really, really good at that. Like some people are incredible at that skill set and they make it work. And that's part of their dialogue with the talent and with everybody involved is they say, look, we're going to build these sets. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. And they're masters at that and they make it work for what they do. I'm just saying for my personal approach to filmmaking at this point in my life, I'm trying to just be as real in their environments and with them as I can. That's my goal.
Okay, example of this frame here from Selah.
Yeah.
Terribly grieving, very tired, obviously stressed out man sitting down, talking to you. How did you position this interview here?
So everybody in the Selah film was staying on the property. So the idea was at any given time, we would have our cameras on us. People would be crossing, going from here to there. There were different sessions. Nathan, for example, who's pictured in this frame, was staying with us. So we would connect with him every morning, usually walk over to the meetings with him and sometimes walk home with him. And all of the information had been conveyed to everybody before the filming of like the general pieces that we wanted to get. Like obviously we need an interview from you, we need an interview from you, and so on and so forth. So in this example, I can't remember specifically how it came together, but I remember obviously it was at the end of the day and I believe we were like walking back to the house and I must have said something like, hey Nathan, is it okay if we talk for you a second about Silas? I know Silas loved horses. The horses were in the field. And so it just felt like an appropriate space to just spend a moment reflecting. He had already been in this space of reflection and thinking and grieving. So it didn't feel like I was imposing. It was all part of the initial understanding that this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work. And so that's why all the interviews and sound bites in the film are just very from the heart and in the moment because we designed it that way.
Yeah. So you didn't wake him up at 5 a.m. and go, let's talk about this really heavy stuff on the hillside.
No.
I've been here where you have a thing to capture and it's really heavy and you don't want to insert yourself too much, but you also want to tell the story. When I'm looking at these shots, I can almost picture you behind that camera trying to make the game time decision of, do I take advantage of this opportunity or do I let things be? Mm-hmm. Is that true? I mean, did you constantly battle that?
Well, one of the reasons we decided to go for 9 days is because it gave us more than enough time to capture everything that I felt we needed from all the prep that I did. Because the actual workshop itself that they went through was the better part of like 3 days. And so I had a total of 9 days, and there was a couple days on the beginning where we got a lot of filming with Dr. Joe, who works there full time. So we had like really great access to her, and Eric works there full time, who's one of the other leads in the documentary. And so these people had time, like they knew we were coming to tell this story. So they made sure that they were available on those days outside of the workshop. Now, on the workshop itself, that was very buttoned up and very organized. And so we were operating sort of like a military unit. And we knew where they were going to be. We knew where we had to be. And so we designed the whole program in a way to where I could make it work. And that was Dr. Joe's idea. When I first met with her and I talked earlier about how are we going to make a film, she said, well, we could just take one of my grief programs and we could like slightly modify it so that way like you guys aren't getting in the way and you have enough time to do what you need to do. And so that bought us like enough of a buffer on like each side of everything that they would do to like get there, get set up, and get in place. So I never felt like I was imposing, because we were largely just documenting and doing what we said we were going to do from the get-go. So
I love it, man. It's a beautiful piece. I love your approach to it, just like all your work. You sent me behind the scene images, and it's literally just like two people and a camera, it looks like. It's really minimal, but when I watch this, I mean, it looks stunning.
Thank you. Yeah, it was three of us. It was myself, Ryan Sanderson, who's the DP, and Ian Chi, who was the producer.
It's beautiful, man. So there's these two questions that are pretty vague that I love asking. The first question is, what's overrated?
When I think about things that have been overrated in my life, I would say that I've put too much of an emphasis on having more money than I need. And I've moved back quite a few belt straps over the last like 8 years in terms of how much money I've made. I used to make a lot more money than I make right now. And it's largely because I got really clear on what's important to me and like how much I really need in my life. And when I had too much of an emphasis on like money and success and awards and not really being clear on what I needed, that really gave me a lot of whiplash. So I would say for me, like, too much money has been overrated, and knowing what is enough for me to live a comfortable, meaningful life is what is really the priority for me right now.
That's a big one for me right now too, is trying to decide what I think that is.
Yeah.
And what is the effort worth? What is the time worth in chasing that? Because it's a pretty relative idea, this amount of like, what is wealth? Like, what does each person need? I think people have different needs, people have different wants. But you're saying you've kind of like found what it is that you need in terms of amount of wealth in the world monetarily?
Yeah, I have a good sense of what I need for my wife, my dog, and I to live a fulfilling life. And we have a pretty strict budget in terms of what we spend. You know, we have things budgeted in, like, you know, we try and go on like one cool vacation a year. We try and do a bunch of little things with my parents. We do a few little like Airbnb trips throughout the year to like small towns, and it's nothing like super extravagant. And then we try and have enough savings to be able to go to China like once every couple of years, for example. But it's really not that extravagant, especially now that I'm living in Baltimore. It's a little bit of money goes a long way here versus when I was living in New York City, and that money it just seemed like it just evaporated in thin air. And I could tell you a whole bunch of reasons why I think that happens, but
yeah,
I think just getting clear on what I need and what leads me to a happy, fulfilled life, and so much of that has come through just like introspection and reflection, therapy, coaching, journaling, everything, and like trying to get to the bare minimums and realize when a desire comes up, it's like, is that needed, or is that just me trying to escape from some discomfort? Like the other day, I was looking at a ridiculously expensive Leica lens for my camera, and I'm like, do I actually need this, or do I actually need to just like spend this time being grateful for what I actually have? And that's kind of been like the barometer for how I measure success in my life, is like, if I ever notice that there's a time where I'm not feeling grateful for what I have, and I'm like reaching for lots of other things to like fill that hole within me, then that's a moment that I realize I need to take a couple of days off and like get back to ground zero, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. What's underrated?
Yeah, I have pretty strong feelings about this one.
Good.
Yeah, I would say what's underrated is investing in yourself. And I'm not talking about financially necessarily. I mean like carving out time for oneself, for solitude and reflection and journaling. And maybe you do invest in things like therapy or coaching or whatever it is to bring you back to a more whole sense of being. But I think realizing like the value of our time that we actually have, and just not filling it with things constantly, is a really, really valuable place to be.
There's this question I have. It's like, what do you want to do next? But it leads me to like another idea, another question of like, well, what do we need to do in our lives to consider it a fulfilled one? Like, at least with our work, you know what I mean? I think you told me before that you think you have like a pretty untypical filmmaker journey, you know? And I don't know if that's actually true, because I think a lot of filmmakers kind of experienced a lot of the same things that you have, where it's it seems to be a lot of like searching and a lot of like unknown, you know. I'm trying to find a place to land on this question, dude, but it's like, have you figured out what you need in life to be fully fulfilled? Like sometimes, John, I sit back and ask myself this question. It's like, what do I need to have made in order to feel like I've fulfilled my destiny? Do I need to have made a movie, right? In order for that, for example, does it mean owning a home? Like at this point in your life, have you like determined what it is that you would need in order to say that you've made it, that you've done it?
Yeah, I think I have a pretty good sense of what I need, and there's a couple main things. I would say my wife I love so much, and we often joke that like if we lived in like a dumpster or something, we would be totally okay. Like if everything just went into flames, like we'd have each other. But then that's also more of like an earthly way of thinking of things. Like I am a Christian as well, so like I pray a lot and I go to church, and a lot of my grounding comes through my faith, because that is just greater than this earth. The connection that I have in like the spiritual realm is beyond my wife. And I know that, for example, if my wife was to die in a couple days, and I'm learning a lot of this through the film that I just made, like I can't let that make me lose my sense of meaning and purpose. And if my sense of meaning and purpose is tied to something that is just on this earth, then that's setting me up to be in like an extremely vulnerable position. And so like I seek grounding from like things above me in like spiritual realms. And that's why I like pray and journal and do all the things that I do, because that keeps me grounded. And I know that if like the whole world lights on fire and I die, like at least there will be some hope there for me, you know? To each his own, obviously, but that's what keeps me grounded. Because I've had a lot of different types of success, and a lot of friends as well that have had much more success than I have, and these are all the types of conversations that I'm having on like a regular basis, as well as like what is meaningful, what is important, and I feel pretty secure in my faith and my relationships, and I would say it really comes down to those two main things to me at this point in my life.
I like to end with the same question, and that question is, what haven't I asked you?
What haven't you asked me?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Ball's in your court, man.
I've just been really grateful recently, I think, for everything that I've been working towards. Like over the last 7 or 8 years, it's been a wild road, to say the least. Anybody that's been depressed or like deeply burned out at a point in their career and found their way out of it knows that it's a long journey. And my journey has bit very long, and I would never want anybody to think that, I found this woman in China and then everything was great. The first few years of our marriage was like really, really hard, because I was so hardened and like white knuckling my way through my days, and so ridden with anxiety from all the reactivity of our industry. And I was not feeling deeply human in those formative years of our marriage. I was like learning how to live and like provide, and I didn't have my production company to fall back on, so I had a lot of insecurity about like, how am I gonna survive? And I think anybody that has also made like some type of career pivot can relate to that anxiety that comes from that as well, as it can be terrifying. And so a part of that depression was like coupled with not knowing how I was gonna make a living. And just over the last 7 or 8 years, I think I've just showed up consistently to the things that were important to me, whether if it was like book studies or men's groups or Zoom calls or whatever it is. I've just showed up and just been consistent because I knew that I didn't want to go back to where I was. Like, I didn't want to go back to being this like anxious, burned out, creative guy. I wanted to just feel alive. And so that has been a result of just a lot of like discipline and just really never wanting to experience that type of darkness ever again in my life. And of course, you know, there have been other dark periods throughout my life, but they weren't as, it didn't take me 6 years to like crawl out of it. Like, I would say I've been not,
Yeah.
it's hard to say because I've been depressed a few times since that big depression,
Right.
but they were shorter term depressions. They weren't like really hardcore. So all of that said, I think all of the work that has gone into everything over the last 7 years has led me to a place where I'm just like grateful to be coaching full time, grateful to be making the films I'm making, grateful to spend time with my family, my wife. And I feel like I wasn't that way when I was like so active in the film industry. I feel like I took a lot of things for granted. And I just remember that being a really empty feeling. And now that I'm feeling more grateful and like practicing that, I feel alive. And so I'm just trying to hold on to these routines and the rhythms and just listen to that still small voice from above and try and take guidance and not exert my own insane willpower over everything.
Well, it sounds like you've taken a lot of time and effort building these tools in your toolbox to like sustain you.
Like I said, I don't want to go back to where I was. It's a miserable feeling being depressed as a result of workaholism. It's absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to go back there. So it's important for me to just show up for myself.
Well, to gratitude, John, thanks so much for this time.
Yeah, thank you, man. It was fun. So curious what you guys edit together.
Yeah, me too. Hey everyone, emergency announcement here. Frameset is launching a new site. We've got upgraded search. It's faster, it's cleaner, it's more intuitive. And we have a new featured page. We've built this dedicated space to celebrate standout work. There's also a ton of behind the scenes content to go check out. Frameset is now more collaborative. You can build and share sets, create a workspace, add people to that workspace. Working together and with other people is such a big part of filmmaking in general, and so we want to foster that with where we're taking Frameset. Bottom line, this is just the beginning. More creative tools and project-based features will arrive later this year, all designed to support creative development. I was able to make a custom code specifically for podcast listeners, so at checkout use code REFRAMED for 10% off. As always, thanks for tuning in.